Sarkissian, President of Armenia. It's a great honor for me, both personally and professionally, to welcome you to HIT Holon Institute of Technology. Both of our nations share similar history, mourning and remembering the unbearable loss of millions in the Holocaust and the Armenian genocide. Yet, we still remember. We will remember these tragic pages of our histories. We truly appreciate your arrival in Israel with other 41 world leaders to mark the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau.
Thank you, dear professor, and good morning, and very happy to be here. I feel I'm home because university is a home. First, I would like to thank for this wonderful, for me, invitation to be here, and I would like to start by continuing what you, professor, was saying, that there is so much common in the fate of our two nations. I think we're both very, very old. We clearly have historically, where our homeland was. We suffered in order to keep our homeland and culture and identity. We are Christian, we are the oldest Christian state in the world, but the Armenian Apostolic Church is different from all the other churches in the world. It's a national church as well. We both lost our statehood for hundreds of years, we regained it recently. And of course, we both suffered huge human tragedy. In 1915, the Armenian genocide that has destroyed 1.5 million of Armenians and has destroyed Armenian communities in Ottoman Empire, created a huge diaspora for us, and of course the Holocaust. And that was and is the main reason why I'm here today, to show my and my nation's respect to the memory of those that perished, to the nation that has the strength of, like the phoenix, come back from ashes, and showing that to everybody that you and we are nations that are proving that life is much more stronger than death. And there's no way anybody in this world can dream thinking about us, about death. They better think about life. Well, I think on the political side, the history side, I should stop here because we don't have much time. And one of my aims visiting here is also to create a bridge. Somehow the bridge between Armenian and Jewish scientists that was very, very strong back in Soviet Union. I was born in Soviet Armenia, got my education, further degrees in Armenia and Soviet Union and Russia, then traveled, one of the rare guys that was allowed to travel abroad, that was working at Cambridge for 2 years, 84, 85, then in America and so on. But one thing and I come from a school, which was the Soviet School of Theoretical Physics. And I'll share with you, you haven't been there. I'm coming from the past. The Soviet School of Theoretical Physics, I would say, was the champion of the world. It was. I think when we were proud of that because there were giants and there was a system how to teach educational system. If there were fantastic books were written by Richard Feynman that I always enjoyed reading. I still enjoy reading them now because the language of this genius is not only the greatest simplifier of mathematical and theoretical language, but someone that knew how to tell the most complex things in a simple way. And I learned from him that if you really understand the complex story, if you really understand, then you can tell it to a 7-year-old boy or a girl or a boy that has logic. You can explain to them theory of relativity in this or that form if you really understand it yourself and you know how to tell that. And as you know, Feynman created the famous Feynman diagrams. I'm one of those students that were doing calculations of elementary particle processes, basically using the old system, having pages and pages and pages of calculating integrals. Then the genius comes and says, no, you just draw some diagrams. They're called Feynman diagrams. So back in Soviet Union, there were so many Armenian scientists working in Moscow, Leningrad, and in Armenia as well, and also Jewish ones. And when I was a student, we had a lot of Jewish students because back in the 1970s, the anti-Semitism in Soviet Union was quite strong, and students of Jewish origin were not allowed to go to the best universities in specific faculties, so they used to come to Armenia. And after our independence, so somehow we lost, because a lot of those who were in Armenia of Jewish origin, they came to Israel as well. So I think I'm here also to try to bridge it, to open a new page, to start it. But before to start it and page it, let's think how we are going to do, what sort of research we are going to do in the future. But in order to think about the future technology and our place there, probably it's the best to think about how the world will look like. Let's say in 5, 10, 20 years' time. I will try to come up with 1 or 2 ideas. It's not complete, it's just haphazard, and it doesn't show you the full picture, but just probably will give feelings that you already have. Well, if you look until 1950s, the population of this planet was around 2.5 billion. And it was growing a couple of percentage per year. Not much. But from 1950s up to now, it's going up. Phenomenon which is interesting because we are becoming a planet with 10 or more billion people living together. Number 2, which is important, is if you ask, well, not probably here. When doing research in mathematics, physics, science, technology, everything looks more or less okay. But when you ask politicians or you ask economists, I'm coming from Davos here, and there are a lot of people are lost. So what's happening? There's so much uncertainty. How the world is going to develop. Politicians are not making the right decisions. Where is going to be the Middle East? Confrontation between different nations and so on. How the economy is going to run. I mean, the great investment banking system has disappeared. So there are more questions than answers, and the classical answers, they don't work. So there is a confusion. Only you meet at places like Davos, if a politician is very, very positive and he speaks with energy, people think, he is running a political campaign for re-election. That is why he is sort of a positive. Otherwise, he will be very negative, that saying everything is uncertain, difficult, and so on. Where does it come from? Let me give you a specific way that I look at it. I have the feeling if we go back 100 and 120, 30 years, go back, when the world was dominated by classical mechanics. And then, as physicists, people started finding phenomena that they couldn't explain. Well, it was more or less the same situation. There were a lot of phenomena that classical physics, the physics of great Isaac Newton couldn't explain. So there was a confusion, a big confusion. What's going to happen? Are we at the end of science, technology? What happened then, as usually happens, geniuses were born, and the name of these geniuses you know better than anyone here in this institute, starting from Albert Einstein and going to the old creators of quantum mechanics that said simple things. In order to explain this phenomenon, you have to change your approach. In order to explain this phenomenon, you have to change your logic. In order to explain this, you have to change your philosophy. The moment you change it, everything is explainable. The moment you change it. But it's completely different because if you know quantum mechanics, I mean, it's not about just if you have to go from position A to B, there is a path, there is a formula or a product that describes this. In quantum mechanics, it's completely different. and you have the principle of uncertainty and many other things, we start thinking in the logic and philosophy of probability. And you are bringing together things that were never together, that were contradictory. Okay? So in order to understand what was happening in quantum physics, you had to change yourself completely, your philosophy, your thinking, your logic, your approach, your mathematics that you were using.